Hello there. Welcome back to episode 74 of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Today, we are doing something just a little bit different. We are talking about the unfinished arc, the Crystal Crisis arc. For a long time, I didn't know this existed, so I'm very glad to have gotten the opportunity to watch it. As always, I'm Jacob.
I'm Eli.
Eli, do you want to give us some background information about this arc? Because I think you know more about this than I do.
I'd love to. This arc is. I was very excited about this because it feels like for me a break from what we've been doing. We've been rewatching a lot of stuff. This is Jacob and my first time watching this arc.
Yeah, we were going in cold.
I knew a few sparse details about this arc with the story, but I know quite a bit about the production. The production goes a little something like this. So they were making season 6 and 7 and even 8 of the Clone Wars. As Dave Filoni described it, they made the Clone Wars when it came out. The Clone Wars was about 3 seasons ahead in production of the stuff that was coming out. So, for example, when they were making when season 1 was being released, they were making seasons 3, 4, and 5 basically. So when the show got canceled, because Disney bought Star Wars and they didn't want Clone Wars to keep showing on Cartoon Network because they had Disney XD to rival Cartoon Network, there were these reels that were just left there that were unfinished. One of them was The Bad Batch, which later got completed as a part of the Clone Wars Revival, Season 7 in 2020, and the other one was The Crystal Crisis. Unfortunately, Crystal Crisis never got completed because they chose to replace it with the Martez Sisters arc for Season 7 of Star Wars The Clone Wars. And the unfinished reels of The Bad Batch and Crystal Crisis that were on StarWars.com were unfortunately removed. Luckily, some brave soul on the internet, who I will link down below, made a Reddit post, which links to a YouTube post, which links to a Dropbox, which has the 4 files.
That's off to you, Eli. You got the internet sleuthing on lock.
Yeah, I bought myself this. I showed Jacob this. I bought myself literally a Clone Wars Season 6 DVD. I'm holding it up to the camera right now because I thought it might have the deleted scenes on it. Turns out, screw this thing. It doesn't have any of it on it.
So disappointing.
It's very disappointing. I spent an entire $15 on that.
Oh no! How are you? I'm never gonna financially recover from this.
Yeah. Anyway, so
this is like that scene in the episode with the Munes that we watched a few weeks ago, where they're freaking out because all the banks are actually empty of all the money, and all the banks they're all being propped up by the separatists.
Am I secretly a separatist spy?
Not clickbait. Everybody click.
Everybody click. Anyway, so I got the files, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna watch these. And so the key defining things before we get into any summaries, any fortune cookies, anything. Let's talk a little bit about how these episodes look. The animation is obviously unfinished.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is like the facial expressions. Like, there's no moving lips. People don't talk.
You
also
glide around. There's no real walking.
There's no walking. They just glide. And often when there are exterior shots of planets, they literally have placeholder texts.
Yeah.
So it'll say like placeholder, like exterior Utapau.
Yeah. So it's definitely very, very skeletal.
Yeah, it's not complete. Let me tell you what is there. The animation's there. The backgrounds are there. The rigs are there. Yeah. Like the assets are there for the characters.
A lot of dialogue. A lot of the more advanced choreography is there as well. Yeah. Like in a lot of the chase scenes and the fight scenes, you actually get everyone twirling around, spinning lightsabers.
Absolutely,
battle droids taking aim. And
dialogue and music, of course, which is huge.
Yeah. Tim, I don't know if it was just me noticing it or because it was unfinished, but to me, parts of the dialogue felt a little bit unfinished.
Really interesting.
Like it felt less polished than other episodes.
Interesting, because I actually felt like I thought the dialogue at least between Anakin and Obi-Wan, the banter back and forth between them was unparalleled in this.
Oh yeah, no, there was some totally stellar banter, as I think we're gonna get into. One of
we'll
the
get
things
into
that
that.
makes me so sad having watched this that it didn't come to fruition was how much depth this gives Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship in the late Clone Wars.
It does, yeah.
But I think before we hop into that, I think we should summarize so we can, start off clean. Make sure that everyone's on the same page as us. In A Death on Utapau, we see Anakin and Obi-Wan traveling to none other than Utapau to investigate the mysterious death of a Jedi Master. While they are there, an autopsy is performed, and this leads them to find that the Jedi Master was killed by a precision laser dart because she stumbled upon a highly secret meeting. This leads them to discover some shady dealings of the Amani people on Utapau, and one of these Amani tribes is involved with these Sugi people, who are in turn involved in a potential separatist arms deal. So the Jedi, of course, they try to get the Utapau government involved. The governor, however, is very reluctant, and they end up facing off with some Magna Guards as the trail kind of heats up. And yeah, that's kind of where we leave off at the end.
Absolutely.
And it kind of sets us up in Search of the Crystal.
The crystal, yeah. Our fortune cookie is one crime has to be concealed by another.
I think it doesn't have to me, it isn't especially interesting or insightful for this episode. Yes, it is true. It is definitely, for me, maybe it is definitely the Clone Wars finally acknowledging my obsession. Yes, they definitely got this idea from me of my obsession with peeling back the layers.
Yep.
And that's what it reminded me of.
I wrote in my notes, legitimately, I wrote back about a development in this episode. We are peeling back these layers.
Yeah, this entire arc is like is basically, it feels like fan service for my obsession with when Star Wars decides to like go slow and go mysterious and peel back.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, if the Yoda and the Force arc was fan service to me and my obsession with anything mystical in the Force, this is your obsession with the mystery type storytelling.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, yeah, and before we begin, I just want to say these episodes, I don't know about you, Eli, I had way more fun watching them than I ever thought I would when you told me, hey, we're going to watch some unfinished Clone Wars episodes.
Interesting.
I was like, oh man, this might be a drag. But no, these episodes for me, they were so just irreverent and goofy and out of left field. It really felt like a throwback to early Clone Wars, but like even more.
I had that comment
over the
too,
top.
yeah. I had that comment too that it felt like a throwback. I think this is going to be one of the rare instances where I think you're going to like this a lot more than I do. It's not that I hate this at all, but like I think this arc, spoiler for my personal opinion on it, I think this arc is maybe the weakest of the later Clone Wars arcs for me. It's not that it's bad, it just doesn't do as much for me, but there's definitely some stuff I love in here. But let's get into this. First of all, let's talk about this opening narration because I love what this sets up, and I'm disappointed by like how it sets it up so well, and then it just doesn't do much with it. So it describes the ecosystem, the political and geographic ecosystem of Utapau. Utapau is divided up into these three species. There's the older species, the Pawans and the Utai, hence getting the name Utai Pawan, Utapau. And then there's this new transplant of species called the Amani. They're described as primitive and more violent. Am I the only one who is just like, oh, I'm so excited to see all three of these in action, and then we get the Pawans, and then we get the Amani, and the Utai just get snubbed?
Yeah, the Utai. I think the only reason I know about the Utai is because they're name checked in like one or two of these, Star Wars visual dictionary books that
Yeah,
are
that's
always
me
like
too.
in the library that you
Yeah,
that you look at.
that's pretty much me. I only know Utai from reference books, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, they're finally gonna get there doing this arc, and then I watched the arc.
Nope.
I'm like, damn, they
Absolutely
don't
not.
finally get there due, man.
Man, the Utai really get they really get done dirty in this. Maybe somewhere down the line we can get a comic, maybe an
Hashtag
anthology
release the
movie.
Utai cut.
Hashtag for the yeah, maybe down the line we get like an Utai anthology movie or something.
Yeah, I'm
Little
just really
Utai
curious about them because
Christmas
they're short,
special.
little, stubby guys, and
I know, yeah.
they live
I mean,
where cliffs are just like commonplace.
yeah, and I mean, if Star Wars has taught us anything, it's to never underestimate a short and stubby species. Looking at you, Return
Damn,
of the
do it my
Jedi.
way.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I agree with you about the opening. It really would have changed how parts of Revenge of the Sith on Utapau play out. And I'm sorry, but Anakin walking in this first scene, him disembarking, it's the most cursed thing ever. I mean, this reminds me. This feels like a hybrid between the Clone Wars and KOTOR. That's what it feels like to me graphically. Like it really makes KOTOR graphics look super advanced and cutting edge by
Jacob,
comparison.
this
Obviously,
is
it's not a fair
unfinished.
comparison.
Okay, if we
I know,
had the
obviously, it's
finished arc,
unfinished.
they would have looked as good as season 6
I
arcs
know it
would
would
have
have
looked.
looked. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can't stop thinking about how amazing it would have looked, and yet
I will
I
say
don't know
this
about
is.
you, but
I'm sorry, I was gonna say this is funny. Going from this to the Bad Batch next,
oh
no, or to like Ahsoka's Walkabout. We're actually doing Ahsoka's Walkabout first. Even
yeah,
so, season 7 animation is peak animation, and
chef's
this is
kiss.
an unfinished reel.
It's gonna be a bit of a
It's
shock.
gonna be jarring.
And yet I don't know about you, Eli, but I feel like by the time we got to Crystal Crisis, by the time I was on the hell, by the time I was on In Search of the Crystal, the second episode, I feel like I had grown accustomed to the visual language, and I was able to just kind of focus on the story, despite how crazy, silly, and goofy a lot of it looked simply because of it being unfinished.
Yeah, I knew what I was walking into with this. I guess I knew that these episodes aren't going to be the creme de la creme visually.
Yeah.
But that they still tell an interesting story that's part of the canon, and that I want to see that. And I think that, and I was able to kind of compartmentalize that, I guess. Let's talk about. Do you want to talk about Master Tuon?
Yeah, let's talk about Master Tuon because that's kind of where this whole thing kicks off.
Master Tuon is shot dead by a precision laser dart on Utapau because she was spying on a secret meeting that the Amani were holding with an arms dealing species called the Sugi. Tuon is described by Obi-Wan as a maverick, and he specifically points out, and I love this little detail, he specifically points out, oh, like my old master. And I find it so interesting that Obi-Wan starts the arc by talking about his old master that's gone, and later we hear Anakin talk about his young Padawan, who's also gone. That's
arc a very interesting observation.
This arc is a lot about loss, and it's a lot about the generations of these Jedi who come and go, and we see that a lot with Obi-Wan and Anakin banter. But it just got me thinking about that. And
very interesting. I totally didn't pick up on that connection. That's really cool. Yeah. I mean, maybe one reason that this arc, I know it was unfinished, but maybe it's for the best. I think maybe this would have stepped on the Lost One's toes, you know. Another missing Maverick right after we have another missing Maverick right after we have the Sifo Dyas arc. You know, the investigation, I think, you know, pretty standard late Clone Wars stuff. Take a shot for every time I say peeling back the layers. But
Yeah.
one thing that felt I thought the dialogue in this felt very not the Clone Wars. It felt very prequel, maybe even prequel deleted scene, where it just felt a little bit off and stilted to me. Like when they were talking about the precision optical laser, they said the phrase precision optical laser way too many times in a short span. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you notice that, or was that just me?
I've taken the least notes on any episode that I've ever taken on A Death of Utapau. And I appreciate the Clone Wars tendency of peeling back layers. I think it moved a little too slow for me. I think it didn't peel back the layers quite quick enough.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Personally, I didn't mind it that much, but you know,
Yeah.
the Toydarian, I feel like the part where they're interrogating this Toydarian, totally unnecessary. Then you have the lab, and then they're talking to the governor.
Yeah, the
and
lab
then
is
they
a
go
little
fly to
weird.
meet the Amani. Yeah,
And then the lab. I do like the Toydarian only because Anakin gets really pissed at the Toydarian because he is obviously reminded of Watto.
Yeah,
and I love how he immediately threatens him. It's not he wants to do it. It's instinctual.
He's like, it's so much his built up rage coming from the pain of being in servitude to Watto has just made him go berserk. It's crazy to see how he just goes berserk on this random Toydarian.
Scene with the Governor Blom.
Governor Blom. Yeah.
That was so completely unnecessary.
Yeah. There's
literally,
a lot in this
Governor Blom was like,
that...
hey, you gotta leave. And Obi-Wan and Anakin, to quote the infamous meme, go, oh no! Anyway.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, but we suspect there's an arms deal. He's like, okay, we don't care. And Obi-Wan's just like, oh, you don't want our help? The X all surprised, and the Utapau's like, no. Because he's acting very suspicious himself.
Then Obi-Wan goes, oh no, anyway.
Yeah.
Back to our investigation.
Yeah,
I love how they just carry on as if nothing happened.
Yeah. I think for me, the interesting part of this episode kicks up when we get to meet the Amani. When Anakin and Obi-Wan fly in, they meet the Amani. I don't know about you, Eli, but throwback to the foundation, the genesis of In a Galaxy. The scene with the Amani gave me some serious KOTOR cutscene alien language vibes.
Oh, interesting. I was thinking right now.
It really reminded me
back
of
to
that.
The Tulls from season 1.
Definitely that vibe as well. I mean, the way it just, maybe because it was unfinished, the way you just have a shot of Anakin or Obi-Wan saying a quick line, and then you cut over to like a pretty still shot of the alien, and the
way too long.
And the alien was just talking. And the alien is like, doobie doof blah blah. The alien's just talking for way too long. So yeah, that definitely made me not necessarily nostalgic, but I was reminded of KOTOR. Even if I'm glad that we've passed that stage of the show.
Yeah. I gotta say, my favorite line of the episode, I don't know if you remember, remember Anakin and Obi-Wan were trying to, they were trying to defeat the Magna Guards that were trying to follow the Magna Guards, and Obi-Wan's like, capture one of them. And Anakin defeats one, and then he slams the other one into like some sort of generator. He goes, "Oops, I broke it."
Yeah, I wrote that down as well.
Which is so freaking fun. Anakin's and Obi-Wan's sass in this arc is off the charts.
No, yeah, everything about this arc is so over the top. Like, it makes me wonder how this would have played out or how it would have been changed, because I feel like it would have been so completely out of line with the rest of late Clone Wars, at least as we've seen it with season 5, season 6, season 7.
I get that. I also do feel like I think this stuff is important. I think this, we talked about season 6 being an apology for seasons 1 through 5, before they eventually regress, of course. And I think that Crystal Crisis, in a lot of ways, continues that trend, where they get so close, like Anakin and Obi-Wan get so close to finally revealing like their true feelings to each other.
Yeah, and then they don't.
And then they don't. And then it's the tragedy of if they could have just gone that little bit further.
Yeah. I think that's, once again, part of the brilliance of the late Clone Wars is how well it shows this idea, and how heartbreaking they can make it.
Yeah,
so I think you're spot on there.
Yeah. Anything else for this episode?
No, I think we can move on pretty quickly. I have one more thing, but like, this episode, it felt like this. I felt like 80 or 90% of this episode just could have been avoided altogether, and I don't think the story really would have been changed that much. That being said, the Magna Guard duel, I thought it was freaking awesome. I wish we could have got it in finished form, because, despite the clunky visuals, the choreography is all there, and I thought it was absolutely spot on. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate. I appreciate what this episode does. I'm excited to move on to the other ones, because there's some, especially in the second and fourth episodes, there's some really good stuff. You want to move on to In Search of the Crystal?
Yeah. Speaking of the second episode, we have In Search of the Crystal. Anakin and Obi-Wan now realize, they find out that the arms deal is concerning a massive kyber crystal. They pull up on the plains of Mani following a lead. However, they are captured by the Sugi, which are are they a species? Are they cybernetically enhanced with those legs?
I thought they were a species. I'm pretty sure they're a species.
They're captured by the Sugi. They are taken to the Sugi leader at the camp. However, of course, Anakin and Obi-Wan, after another long walk to the base of operations, eventually Anakin and Obi-Wan escape custody. However, the chief arms dealer also escapes from the whirlwind of violence that is the Jedi when they don't like something, and that's where it ends.
Absolutely. Our fortune cookie is: the journey is often more important than the destination.
What do you think of this one? Because I kind of came up lacking thinking about this fortune cookie.
I actually think this is the best fortune cookie of the arc.
Really?
It doesn't actually say a lot about the fortune cookies, really. I think like the hero's journey with, I'm thinking, your standard Luke, Ezra, Ahsoka, Rey, not Ahsoka, Luke, Ezra, Anakin, Rey, though it can also apply to Ahsoka as well. And how, where they end up is important, but what's more important is the trials and the tribulations that they had to face in the meantime. I am a Jedi like my father before me doesn't work as well if you disregard the Dagobah training sequences. Rey facing off against Palpatine on Exegol doesn't work as well if you disregard the Octo training sequences. Ezra vanishing Thrawn from the galaxy doesn't work as well if you disregard the stuff in like mid-season 1 with training with Kanan.
In terms of characters, I think you're absolutely right, and you brought up a good point that I hadn't thought of. However, I would also contend that when you're investigating a murder and potentially a massive arms deal, I'd say the destination is also pretty important.
Oh, I
if
would
you
say
want
so
to
too.
find
Yeah.
the murderer, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool. It's cool, you know. I didn't quite vibe with it, but clearly you found a valuable takeaway. So, you know,
Yeah.
nothing to complain about there, I suppose. Um,
Yeah.
so where do you want to jump in? We see the I think it's cool to see the Utapau planes to get to see
I
a little bit
agree.
more.
And
I
I
think this
totally. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I was just gonna say I think this episode, like the last, I really like what it does for the Utapauan world building. I wish that we could have seen this come to fruition because I think once again, I think for better or for worse, this is an example of how having seen Revenge of the Sith now, without having seen this, we really see how elements of the prequels can be changed, especially Revenge of the Sith, can be changed by the presence of, you know, having it backed up and having some of the events kind of backed up and contextualized by the Clone Wars.
Yeah. I think the whole sequence where they engage the Amani is good, and I think it's an exciting sequence. But there's one line I want to get to in the conversation that follows, and I think you know what it is. I'll contact Ahsoka. Maybe she can.
Oh, geez.
I knew it
That
was
is,
coming. I knew that line was coming. I was not prepared for that entire conversation. But this is, I think, the biggest strength of this arc, honestly. This whole conversation is the biggest strength of this arc.
yeah. I mean, even just, yeah, momentarily forgetting she's in the order. But just the fact that he refuses to talk about it with Obi-Wan, it's so, while to me very expected, it's so sad to see how Anakin doesn't feel any way.
I miss her,
Or doesn't
okay?
feel, yeah.
Oh, sorry,
He
yeah.
doesn't feel there's any way to cope with his feelings.
I miss her, okay? Is that what you wanted me to say? I still can't understand how she could have left the Order. It was wrong. She's a Jedi. She belongs with us. She's one of us.
Yeah. I think this moment. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting how the people who Anakin feels great attachments to, he often goes straight to control with.
Yeah.
She belongs with us. You know, this is very reminiscent of I'm demanding as your husband that you not take this mission from the Clovis arc.
Yeah. Because I think he's dealt with so much instability and uncertainty and loss, especially early in this arc, that when there's someone that he really loves and cares about,
Yeah,
he doesn't necessarily know how to handle that, especially given how between his experiences on Tatooine and then, of course, growing up in the Jedi Order, he kind of his emotional development is somewhat stunted, I think.
it's really tragic. This whole scene is incredibly heart wrenching. I think one of the best parts of the scene easily is Matt Lanter. Matt Lanter kills it.
Oh yeah,
The
absolutely.
voice acting is
voice performance.
exactly what it should be in that moment.
Absolutely.
And then I want to get to this haunting line. This really just, I think maybe one of my favorite lines of this episode. How would you feel if I turned into a major disappointment? You took me under your wing and practically raised me. I'm your Padawan, just like Ahsoka was mine. How well would you sleep knowing I failed you?
Absolute. Yeah, that's an absolute bombshell for me. When my jaw hit the floor when I watched through that, because we really see here how Anakin feels. He feels personally, but not only is he sad that Ahsoka left, not only is this a loss, but it's not just a loss for him, it's a personal betrayal for him.
Yeah. And I also like just, this is one of the best uses in Star Wars of dramatic irony, because we know that Obi-Wan will have to go to sleep at night for the next 19 years pretty soon, knowing that Anakin failed him. And Obi-Wan says, luckily that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
And you just want to scream at the screen, you know what I mean? You want to scream.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And tell them that they're heading towards a path of ruin, but you just can't. I also noticed a really incredible and haunting, and I don't know if they watched Crystal Crisis before they made Twin Sons, but notice when they're having these conversations, Obi-Wan's lying down by what? A bonfire. When Ezra finds old Ben in Twin Sons, what is he sitting by? A bonfire. Yeah. That's good.
That's a good parallel. That is something that I hadn't.
I immediately thought of the Twin Sons bonfire, and I imagined Obi-Wan looking into that fire and thinking about what would happen if Anakin had failed him. And I think about Obi-Wan looking back at Twin Sons at like a similar bonfire, knowing that indeed he had failed Anakin. Yeah. Kenobi, you cannot come soon enough. Deborah Chow.
Oh my goodness.
In Deborah Chow we trust.
Yep.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yep. I mean, this is one of those scenes where this is really one of those moments where I went, man, if only these episodes had been completed. If only this had been made available to a much wider audience of people who didn't have to work to try and find it and seek it out and sit through some unfinished episodes, because I would just have loved to seen everyone's reaction to this, to see, how much hype would this get? What would other people's reaction to this be? Because to me, this lends so much depth also to Rebels and Anakin and Ahsoka, or Vader and Ahsoka's confrontation in Rebels, where Anakin / Vader is like, why did you leave me, Ahsoka? I feel like this kind of helps explain so well why Anakin takes it so personally, even though he's also we can see he's also furious with the council and super disillusioned. Feels like they totally mistreated Ahsoka, which they arguably did. So not only is he now resentful of Ahsoka, it also just pushes him further away from the Jedi and further into the place of resentment, the place of I'm better than the Jedi. Yeah, I should be free of the Jedi.
Yeah, I know they recreated this scene. Some people recreated the scene in Battlefront 2 of all things. Using the Anakin and Obi-Wan assets in Battlefront 2. Now, they can't open their mouths, as well. But it's better animated. I love... This scene is maybe one of the most potent scenes in this entire arc. There's a lot of richness in this scene. Anakin dwelling on Ahsoka's decision won't bring her back. And like that, and again, this they talk about in this. I watched a behind the scenes video. They're talking about this arc, and they're like, we wanted to bring original trilogy themes into the prequel era with this arc. That's one of the
certainly did that.
And the tones and stuff like that. And that doesn't sound like a prequel Obi-Wan line. That sounds like something that that Ben would say to Luke in New Hope.
Yeah, this feels like the Obi-Wan who has had all too much experience with dwelling on the past. Can you even? This forces you to think when you watch this and realize what Obi-Wan's going to be going through soon in the story. Can you even imagine the weight that must be on Obi-Wan's shoulders for the rest of his life following Revenge of the Sith? It's just unimaginable to me.
it's incredible the burden that Obi-Wan has to bear, and I can't believe this is tying so much into Kenobi. We are what? By the time this episode releases, this episode will release officially 3 months out from the Kenobi series. Exactly.
Unintentional Kenobi plug.
Unintentional Kenobi plug. Yeah. I'm so excited for it, and I think it's going to be very beautiful, and very poignant.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Yeah. So let's talk. I think we should break into this if you don't mind. Let's talk about this crystal. The biggest mystery in this arc is what the hell are the Separatists using this crystal for?
Okay.
It's never directly or indirectly stated in this arc, but I do believe that the Separatists were trying to make the Death Star.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think that that only makes sense. That's the only possible explanation for me. I thought it was the Death
biggest
Star
flaws
for sure.
with this arc is that they don't directly or indirectly reference that.
Yeah, I think
it
that
felt like
was
it was
really
building to that, and even if a Separatist had dropped the term ultimate superweapon, we would have gotten the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we see the little hologram on Geonosis in Attack of the Clones. Like the seed has been
we know the Separatists
planted.
have it. Yeah, we know they have it, and we know that they're interested in developing it, and we know that Palpatine and his guys, the Sidious, is interested in developing it, and we see the green beams when they shoot at the crystal that remind us of that. We get so close, but we don't actually get the illusion that I feel like we need in order for this to fully connect.
Yeah, and I mean, I think in some ways that's one thing that I think sets apart the Kyber Crystal episode in Rebels, in season 4 of Rebels with Saw Gerrera, which I think in some ways
in the name of the rebellion
feels like in the name of the rebellion, which I think in some ways feels like maybe a bit of a tribute, maybe more than a tribute. I think it kind of takes some of the ideas from these episodes that ended up going unused and putting it to use in a different way. Part of what makes that episode so punchy and gives it weight is that while we don't need to hear it outright, we have those hints, just those little hints that kind of bring in the awe-inspiring terror of the Death Star that we know from Rogue One, that we know from the original movie, which I blanked the name of A New Hope for a moment, which we know from countless books and comics and other media. Just being able to invoke that just a little bit, just hint at it, brings so much more weight. And I absolutely agree with you that was missing here.
Yeah. I do like this now, going back to this. When they're approaching what Anakin thinks is a mound, and Obi-Wan goes, "That's no mound. It's a spaceship."
That moment for me, I was like, man,
it's a reference.
It's like poetry.
But if you look back at what this arc is about, you remember that Obi-Wan says that in A New Hope as they're approaching what? The Death Star.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
So,
oh my gosh. It's deeper than just a random reference.
It's not random at all. Obi-Wan was approaching a part of the Death Star here, and then there he was approaching the actual thing.
Wow. Man, that totally went over my head, but that makes a lot more sense now as a moment.
Yeah, it went over my head because I didn't the first time I watched it, because I didn't know, I didn't realize until basically the last episode. I didn't put it together that was what it was being used for. I mean, I did. Here's the thing. I suspected it was, but I wasn't sure until that last one. Yeah.
But I mean, we need to talk. I think I want to start talking about the banter between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which I think it kind of starts. It picks up and really is a difference maker in these episodes. Starting, when they're woken up by the Sugi and they're captured, because to me, I don't know about you, but I feel like this isn't your average Clone Wars banter. This is like
No.
Revenge of the Sith. This is like Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith style Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's totally
Yeah.
bridging that gap between the shows and the movies.
Well, there are two types of really great ones that types of their banter that I really love. The first one is what you're talking about, the sass, all right, now that was impressive. Thank you, master.
Yeah.
Or the I'm trying to act convincing. Well, bravo, brilliant performance. Those kind of sass lines that are just the peak of their banter to each other. There's also a lot of Clone Wars meta references, which keys back to what you were saying, and something I noticed as well, which is that this arc feels like a throwback to the season 1 and 2 days. For example, I don't know if you caught this. Did you catch, we're always in the ventilation duct, whatever ship we go in.
Yeah.
That's a meta reference. We know we like Anakin and Obi-Wan would be graded in a galaxy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think they would. Obi-Wan, I just want to say, Obi-Wan, thank you for acknowledging Star Wars' rampant problem. Star Wars TV specifically with
vents.
horrible overuse of vents because they always
my favorite part
seem to come
is
up.
One of the separatist references it later in the arc. And I love that they're that self-aware now too. Like, they're supposed to be stupid, but like they even they're like, did you check the vents? That's the oldest trick in the book.
yeah. It was hilarious. They I know. I think the Clone Wars just gaining a new level of self-awareness on the part of the creators. So I think really well done for that. That really made me appreciate these episodes. But I think, when they're captured, obviously Anakin and Obi-Wan, they have the tension of Anakin very action-oriented. He's really chomping at the bit. And then we have Obi-Wan saying, oh, no, we got to sit back. And I like that because it's so emblematic of their relationship. And it's the perfect summary kind of pretty much all of the Clone Wars and the prequel era in terms of how they operate.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a joy to see this blast from the past, as you should call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really enjoyable to see that.
The last part of this episode, I feel, when Obi-Wan says, or when Anakin says crystal, I thought he said missile. And then he's complaining. He's like, don't you guys have a speeder or a ship when he's being forced to, when him and Obi-Wan are being forced to walk as prisoners? Like, this to me is where I go, this is something different. Because at that point, these episodes just become pure, unbridled chaos and trolling hilarity. And I'm not quite sure what to make of it, given how heavy a lot of the rest of late Clone Wars is.
Yeah, I understand what you're going with there. It does seem a little bit, how do I say, unbalanced, I guess you could say.
To me, it felt very, and not in a bad way. Obviously, I feel like it felt like a great throwback to, earlier Clone Wars, and I thought it injected some much needed levity. But it just felt very strange compared to the rest of the Clone Wars at this stage, that they're just cracking jokes and whatnot left and right.
This is something
not that I'm complaining though.
Yeah, this is a note I took for the next episode, but it applies to the entire arc. Even though I understand why, and we'll get to this later, why Ahsoka's walkabout was put in the Martez sisters instead of this for season 7, I think Crystal Crisis generally fits better stylistically with the Bad Batch than Ahsoka's walkabout does. And let me be clear, I like Ahsoka's walkabout as an arc better than Crystal Crisis, but I think Crystal Crisis stylistically, because both Crystal Crisis and Bad Batch are very they're very funny. They move at the speed of thought, except for that first episode, but They're throwbacks, but you know they're close to Sith and they have that vibe of impending doom just around the corner.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they have a lot in common in that way.
Yeah. A few of the things I have for this. Sorry, did you say something?
Go ahead.
A few of the things I have for this arc. Obviously, there's the scene. I feel like we need to give a little more context since not many people have seen this, but there is a scene where Anakin decides to go to town on some battle droids with two blasters that he took from battle droids. That for me was an unexpected joy. I thought it was freaking awesome. I love how each shot, it seemed, was given so much impact in just in terms of the cinematography, how much emphasis were put on the shots and the sound escape of the episode. Anakin as a Jedi using blasters, obviously the symbolism of that in a time when he's grappling with his frustrations with the conventions of the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Very unexpected joy for me to see Anakin just go to town on some battle droids.
Look at how he was like lusting over those weapons.
Yeah, he was
like, I like this one.
Yeah, he wasn't just doing this out of this wasn't just something he was doing out of necessity. He went to the armory. Yeah.
He went to the armory
and he picked them out and he was like, And Obi-Wan was like, Obi-Wan didn't have his lightsaber, and even Obi-Wan was like, yeah, no, I'm gonna do it the civilized way,
I'm gonna do it with my magic space powers.
Obi-Wan even says, "Oh, such a clumsy weapon," which again, they did a great job of, I guess, bringing in those
references,
those original trilogy energy and references. Also, peak Clone Wars humor, how Anakin kills a bunch of droids, destroys a bunch of droids. Obi-Wan says, "Oh, nobody's impressed," and then immediately one of these Sugi walks around the corner and says, "Impressive Jedi." Like, this is such a troll episode at this point, and I'm really so here for it. I'm so here for it.
I mean, there's a video that I've heard you reference a couple of times, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Master of Trolling.
Yeah,
that could just be this entire arc.
This arc was peak Obi-Wan trolling. I absolutely loved it. Loved it. This is him just saying, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I am the master of trolling, and I'm proud of it, too.
Yeah. Do you want to get on to the Crystal Crises?
Yes, let's get on to the namesake episode, Crystal Crisis. What do you got?
Give me a second. I'm going to pull up the Wikipedia summary because I watched this like 4 days ago or something like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
In Crystal Crisis, the Obi-Wan and Anakin tried to get the massive crystal, Kyber crystal, off of Utapau by trying to launch the Sugi arms dealer's ship. Unfortunately, the engines have been sabotaged, so they have to move it manually, and there's this huge chase where they're trying to get the crystal away manually, and there's a lot of like political drama with the Sugi and Dooku, who Sugi think they can handle it themselves, and Dooku thinks that they need more reinforcements. So there's this whole thing where Dooku's like, I'm gonna send Grievous, I'm gonna send some Magna Guards, and they're like, you don't need to do that, we got this under control. And he's like, that's not what my Magna Guards saw. Explain yourself. It turns out that the Paulan government is indeed conspiring with the Separatists. They capture Anakin and Obi-Wan at Pau City, and the Jedi quickly escape following a shuttle that it has the crystal in it. And for his failure, Governor Blom is executed by General Grievous. We know that his successor will be Chairman Tyan Maiden, who Obi-Wan meets with in Revenge of the Sith. Our fortune cookie is absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
I didn't know about this fortune cookie. I mean, Grievous killing people, sure. I don't know. To me, it didn't make a lot of sense for this episode.
Infamous phrases that we hear. It's an old adage. It's a very Star Wars sentiment, you know.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Star Wars stories about what happens when good people acquire too much power and get drunk off of that. I mean, the prequels.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there are just so many better instances in the Clone Wars that they could have pulled this one out.
No, but trust me, as much shit as we're talking about these 3 fortune cookies, just wait until this next episode, because this next episode has maybe one of the most unbelievable fortune cookies I've ever seen. Anyway, maybe that was just me. But I want to talk about something that happens in this episode that I think is maybe the most beautiful thing that happens in this arc, honestly.
All right, go for it. Lead us off.
And so, Anakin's trying to find some creatures to act as mounts to lead the crystal away. Obi-Wan's investigating a Sugi tent where a Sugi appears behind him. He turns around and he goes, "Hello there." And I, ascended. I, jumped up and down. I'm like, oh my god, Obi-Wan said hello there on Utapau. I'm done with podcasting. I'm done with In a Galaxy. This has been a good run, everyone. I have ascended. I'm officially, you don't know how happy that made me. I'm like, yep, this is the best. I love this. You know, this is technically, it makes the Revenge of the Sith one the second time Obi-Wan said hello there on Utapau, which I think is incredible. It's incredible, and bravo to the writers for including that. I was hoping they would include that on here because I thought it was funny if Obi-Wan would say hello there a second time on Utapau, but I never expected it, and when I saw it, I just lit up.
Yeah,
maybe you're not as enthused about that as I am, but I'm just I kind of died when I saw that.
I don't know. I was not as enthused, I guess, as you were, but I still love that. I still love that moment as a whole. I thought it was, again, super hilarious. Kind of just this over the top feel with the way the characters are conducting themselves. Really going for the more humorous side of the Clone Wars here, it seems to me. Also, can we talk about how when Obi-Wan, when he's doing the mind tricks, when they're trying to find the beast, it really looks like he's holding a Torah when he's holding that bundle of ropes. That's the first thing I thought. It really looked like he was holding a Torah. I was like, okay, Obi-Wan is Obi-Wan holding a space Torah confirmed, not clickbait. I don't know.
Obi-Wan, no, everyone's wrong. Obi-Wan is not Jesus. Obi-Wan is Moses. That's what he is.
Obi-Wan is space Moses confirmed. He parted. Hey, he didn't part the seas, but he parted Darth Maul's legs from his body.
Oh, wow. Clap it up for clap it up.
I just won.
He just won life. Jacob just won life. He's out.
You're welcome. I'm out. I quit the podcast. That was it. It's not going to get better than that for me. It's not going to get better than that.
We both quit In a Galaxy this episode.
Yeah. But that's just one of the many ways in which, this episode, to me, it's just hilarious and just absolutely random as all get out. Yeah. That being said, I think there's actually, in this episode, I thought a lot of really good dialogue as I do this. But I think
next time I'll bring Moss to Windu. Yeah, because he's loads of fun.
Yeah, but I think that's also the bickering about the booster, for instance. It also felt very prequel-y.
Yeah, it did.
The way they were
this had a very great prequel vibe.
Yeah, but in a good way. Not necessarily.
One of my favorite conversations between Obi-Wan and Anakin in this arc, and it's not a banter thing. I love that they discuss, before they try to lower the crystal with the Force and all that kind of stuff, they discuss how they're going to do it. They're like, okay, we're going to cut and then Force push. And you rarely hear people describing out loud their thought processes while using the
actually
Force.
Going back through it, yeah.
And
that also felt very prequel-y to me.
I love that, and I want to see that more. I want to see that more, frankly.
Yeah, like actually, kind of what is it like for these characters? How do they feel? How do they think when they're using the Force? I think that would be incredibly interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciated that. I also do love this. Dooku contacts the leader of the Sugi and gives his typical "you better not fuck this up" speech, even though I know you're about to fuck this up. And then the henchman goes, "No, we won't fuck this up," and then proceeds to fuck it all up.
I mean, Dooku must be just tired at this point. He must just be tired because this speech that he gives to the arms dealer, where he's like,
I can just imagine Dooku's like season 1 Dooku is you better not mess this up. I'm gonna have your skin if you mess this up. And then Dooku season 7 is like, you better not mess this up. I'm gonna have your skin if you mess this up.
Yeah, I mean, poor Dooku. He just, man, there are only 3 certainties. Death, taxes,
and Dooku's henchman failing him.
Dooku's henchman absolutely shitting the bed, and he has to swoop in and or send Grievous to
swoop in,
pick up the pieces,
and also do nothing.
And also do nothing. I mean, but if we can just talk about the arms dealer character for a minute, why does his voice sound so familiar? Because that's the one thing I kept coming back to was I don't know who this guy is.
Endente.
Endente.
He is voiced by James Hong. He was in Blade Runner, interestingly enough. I know why you know him. As Morgan.
Oh, yes, he does sound a lot like As Morgan. Is that the same?
No, he voices As Morgan.
He voices As Morgan. Okay.
Also, this is another deeper cut. I just saw this on Wikipedia. He is also the voice of the Elder in the Elder Visions short.
Really?
The creepy dark side lightsaber guy. Did they kill? Remember the guy, the Elder?
I do. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That makes sense though.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
The Elder. Yeah. I just realized, wow, Morgan's crazy, now that I think about it. I can see it, yeah, I can definitely see As Morgan and Endente being voiced by the same guy.
Yeah, their voices sound, to me, almost identical, and I, as a Rebels fan, I feel, as a big Rebels fan, I feel slightly shocked that I didn't know this. I guess maybe this is my sign that I need to rewatch season 1 of Rebels. It has been quite a few years since I last watched it. I think I watched it last 2019, 2020, which probably the longest since I've watched it since it came out.
Yeah.
In any case, moving on. I don't know. What else do you have for this episode? Because I didn't have a lot.
There's some other funny references I like in this episode. First of all, Grievous asking, I think it's the Powans, "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Is a nice meta reference.
Of course. Man, RIP to the arms dealer, because he was actually pretty funny, and then he just gets slain.
He gets slain
unceremoniously.
I also like the chase sequence at the end and how they brought Varactals into it. And my headcanon is that one of those Varactals is indeed Boga, the Varactal that Obi-Wan rides in Revenge of the Sith.
Really? Very.
It's my headcanon. I just like the idea that one of them in that scene where we just quickly flash to the Varactals is Boga, because it's one of those like fan service moments that I really like, because it's just like it flashes to the Varactals and it's like, oh yeah, they're native to Utapau. Of course they'd be there. And it's not like a, hey, this is important, you need to see this. It's a, if you know, you know. I also love, there's one more meta reference that I love. Master, I'd rather not be here when Grievous arrives. Which is literal reference to Anakin not meeting Grievous until Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. I do think that although there were many things about this arc that I love, one reason I'm glad that it did not get released is that it comes dangerously close, maybe
It does.
unreasonably close
It does.
to having Anakin and Grievous meet to the point where in this chase scene,
Yeah.
in the chase scene with the cave, Anakin and Grievous literally see one another. They clap eyes
Yeah,
on one
they're
another.
far away from it. I'm like, yeah, I put this down in my notes as well. I'm like, they're far away from each other, and that's not meeting. Okay? Okay, that is from a certain point of viewing things so much.
Yeah, that is definitely from a certain point of view of things.
Like having their unconscious bodies be dragged across from each other in Shadow Warrior. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I can live with that. But this,
like, come on, man. Really? Your excuse is they're too far away from each other? Okay.
Yeah, like,
let's not, though.
Imagine how it would have gone. Grievous, you're shorter than I expected. What, Anakin? We literally saw each other like a month ago. Yeah, well, you were far away, so I didn't know how tall you were.
The Big Bang follows Anakin and Obi-Wan's infiltration of a separatist capital ship to get the Kyber crystal back. They board the ship. They get separated. Obi-Wan gets into a fight with Grievous, which indeed he loses. He is captured by Grievous. Anakin simultaneously rescues him and acquires their lightsabers and the crystal. Obi-Wan narrowly avoids execution. And the crystal, as they make their great escape, the crystal is revealed to absorb and intensify the blaster fire of the droids, which causes it to release green beams that are suspiciously reminiscent of the Death Star's super laser. And so Anakin and Obi-Wan make the hard choice that instead of bringing the crystal back to Coruscant, like they originally intended to, at the wishes of the Jedi Council, they will instead destroy the crystal so Grievous cannot use it for more dangerous means. They go back to Coruscant and debrief with the Jedi. The fortune cookie. Let's talk about this fortune. This fortune cookie is maybe one of the most genius fortune cookies I've ever seen.
Okay.
If at first you don't succeed, Jacob, fill in the blank.
Try again.
Sorry, nope, destroy it. If at first you don't succeed, destroy it. I'm not lying. I'm not lying to you. I legitimately had to go on Wikipedia to make sure this was the real fortune cookie because it looked so fake.
It's hilarious.
Really?
I mean, so they just went full. My first thought was, okay, so they just went full troll mode with this one.
And like
but
dark
when you really
side
think
stuff,
about
like,
it,
yeah.
When you really think about it, like I'll let you lead off because I know you were getting really excited about talking about this, but there is like more than meets the eye, I think.
I at the beginning of this episode, I was very confused by it. I understand it now. I think with like with the episode about them destroying the crystal, I understand where they were trying to go with it. I just think it was poorly executed. I think like something about how destroying something might not be good, but sometimes it's necessary might be more appropriate. Or like doing a good thing. Sometimes doing a good thing is less important than preventing a bad thing, or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, especially for the Jedi, because at first, I think the first time I thought about it was like, oh, I feel like if at first you don't succeed, destroy it. And what Obi-Wan says kind of near the end of the episode, he says, if we can't have that crystal, no one can. At first, that feels kind of like a more dark side idea and approach. But then also it makes sense from the Jedi's perspective, where the Jedi, would it be an act of greed potentially to say, okay, we may need to take a riskier route to try and then gain the crystal for ourselves rather than taking the easy route and just destroying it outright. Like it's kind of like, as the Jedi, do they have any right to kind of take it for their own wants and uses and ambitions, or are they more bound, even though it's a kyber crystal and they could really make interesting use of it, are they still just more bound to their servitude and their mandate to protect the galaxy, in which case the easiest way to do that would be, of course, to destroy it, even if it's less beneficial to the Jedi themselves to destroy it. That's kind of what I was really thinking about it. Yeah.
I was thinking back to the Citadel when O.C. Sobek said, picks up, who is it, Tarkin, and goes, "If I can't have the information, no one can."
Yeah, that's kind of like the dark side version of this.
Yeah, I was thinking about the contrast because, the Jedi aren't destroying a life. The Jedi aren't killing someone. The Jedi are just destroying a really powerful crystal. They're just destroying an object. They're both moves out of desperation, but Anakin is destroying an object and a lot of droids. O.C. Sobek is trying to kill someone. I love how those diametrically opposed things are set up, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump into the episode?
Yeah.
Let's talk about with
the meeting with the council.
The meeting with the council, which I think is amazing because you have the council Yoda basically saying, "Obi-Wan, you're being so cavalier right now.
Yes.
You dirty dog." And
cavalier, you're cavalier all the time, and no one says anything about it. I'm just better at it, that's all.
Yeah, the fact that Obi-Wan is so frustrated it takes out his frustration on Anakin because he sees Anakin getting away with this all the time is just hilarious. I think, again, this really makes me wish. I think the banter and the exchanges that we have between Anakin and Obi-Wan, that's what make these episodes, part of what makes these episodes so great to me. I so wish more people could see this. It just brings so much to their relationship, I think.
And it's interesting to me because this is the subtle regression. We got the progression, now we're getting the regression. Because
where they're going back to just scolding.
The council's chiding Obi-Wan for being so cavalier. And it's like being so cavalier is a sign of independence, and the Jedi are famously, against that in this era, they're regressing. And what's masked as a snarky line, and it is also an indicator of the Jedi. They learned, and now they're, as Yoda would say in Empire Strikes Back, they're unlearning what they've learned.
Yeah, like we in the final arc of season 6, like in the Sacrifice Destiny arc, we see like Yoda say like, "Anakin, I know
disobeying the council, your expertise is the exact example I wrote in my notes." Yeah,
he says like, "This is your expertise, but disobeying the council is your expertise, but like it's expertise, like it serves, like it can serve us well, and it can serves you well." And then in here, it seems like he's regressing a little bit, getting back towards Revenge of the Sith. Goes back. I feel like, gosh, there's so many moments where they're so close to breaking through. Even in this, even if this is kind of, I think, the beginning of the regression, feels like they're so close to breaking through in some of these, some of these episodes of the Crystal Arc.
Absolutely. So I want to get to this duel between Obi-Wan and Grievous and why it makes no freaking sense. Can anybody explain to me? Can you explain to me? Can you please explain to me? Obi-Wan, Grievous has his lightsabers crossed on Obi-Wan's neck. He defeats Obi-Wan fair and square. Why is he not dead? I mean, I understand the reason is because the plot needs to happen and Revenge of the Sith needs to happen, but like, he should be so dead. The fact that it takes Dooku to tell him, "Hey, you should have really killed that guy by now," is like freaking ridiculous. Grievous and
I mean, I
Obi-Wan have
think we're
had a
forgetting.
rivalry for this entire war.
Yeah. I think that rivalry is exactly why, though. Do you really think that someone like Grievous, think of all we've seen of Grievous in the Clone Wars, in the movies, is he really just gonna let his biggest rival? Is he really just gonna? Is he really just gonna dispatch him like that? No, he's gonna gloat. He's gonna talk to him. He's probably gonna try and torture him and inflict great bodily pain on Obi-Wan. Like knowing Grievous as the character, I'm not surprised at all that he's like, okay, I'm gonna sock you away and I'm just gonna sit on you and wait until I'm good and ready, and then I'll come talk to you and deal with you. So
Yeah,
to me, it makes perfect sense.
that makes sense. Yeah, I didn't think about that in the first
It's
place.
not, maybe it's not the smart thing to do,
Yeah,
but it's in character for
I think that's
Grievous.
I think that's probably what I was thinking. Is it's just like you should have killed him by now. I love
Yeah,
also that Obi-Wan cites this thing when he's being marched to his execution, the Yavin Code,
yeah, the Yavin Code. It's
which
hilarious.
I think is the Star Wars version of the Geneva Conventions.
Yeah, it must be.
I looked up the Geneva Convention specifically because I like it was like the rule about having a prisoner be blindfolded while their execution, the Yavin Code. Um, uh, and I love how everyone uses it as a distraction. I actually contemplated for a few seconds. I'm like, hey, I could just DM Thomas right now and see what he says about the Geneva Conventions and all that kind of stuff. Alas,
Yeah,
I didn't. He'll be coming back sometime. We won't
yeah.
have him back, so
This means that the clones were they were ignoring the Yavin Code in the Umbara arc when they were going to execute Fives and was it when they were going to execute Fives and Jesse with
Well,
no blindfold on.
here's why that's not true though, because they don't. Remember, they were never planning to. So And by the way, who's
That's
the
true.
guy
That's
who would
true.
care the least about the Yavin Code? Palm
Absolutely,
motherfucking Krell.
absolutely. He would not
Michael,
care at
I
all.
see you, I hear you, I don't care. We at this podcast are anti-Krell, firmly. I don't care
We are very anti-crowd.
what this Michael guy has to say about this. Palm Krell is a terrible basilisk.
If I want to go backwards for a second, just shout one thing out, which is the space chase scene when they're chasing down that shuttle into the separatist supply ship.
Yeah.
Man, I thought the choreography was just absolutely perfect. It was on point. I so wish that we could have seen this finished. Also, the battle droid just having a complete mental breakdown and running away when he sees Anakin show up.
Yeah.
That's absolutely hilarious.
My favorite one is there are two battle droid interactions I love. First of all is when Anakin goes boo and the battle droid is scared away from that. The second one is Anakin asks for his lightsaber back. The battle droid does not shoot at him. It just gives it to him.
Yeah.
And then he destroys the fucker anyway.
Yeah, no, man, the battle droids are really getting the short end of the stick.
I know. I love that they're self-aware. I love that they're self-aware.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love their self-preservation. I know it's like, I know they're just like comic relief, and it's like, oh, they're just like being goofy and silly comic relief, whatever, like meant as a kid's show. But honestly, I honestly love the battle droids, and I can't get enough of them because they just have that mix of, they're so earnest about what they're trying to do, and yet they're also just so, the odds are always so hopelessly stacked against them.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad in a way. Like when we see the battle droid at the end, who is running after the battle droid running after its own legs, which have been detached and are still walking, and it's crawling after it. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. I want to talk about this decision to destroy the crystal.
Yeah. All right.
This is a This is a trope that's been used more often in fiction recently, in geek fiction and stuff like that. I'm thinking of the Elder Wand at the end of the Deathly Hallows, for all the Potter fans, the decision to destroy that. I'm thinking of the decision to destroy the holocron containing the list of all the Jedi names at the end of Jedi Fallen Order. Both of them in line with the crystal, in order to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands. It's a trope that's getting used more and more in fiction these days, and I don't know, it's probably been used in the past as well, of course. But I do like this conclusion to the arc of this whole crystal. I do wish we got a little bit more explanation as to what the crystal was, so that this could have had a little bit more impact, personally.
Yeah, I think that was, like I said, I just think that was the one thing missing, was just some kind of way of tying this into the bigger story of the Death Star. And obviously, just given the Death Star, given that it's the Death Star, they wouldn't have needed to do much.
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know. I just wish they had done a little something, but all in all, I still thought it was fantastic. But it did feel a little bit like it existed in a vacuum at the same time.
Yeah. Anything else before we get to that council meeting at the end? I got one more thing before we get to the council meeting at the end.
I guess overall, I'm just thinking at this point, man, this episode is so crazy and over the top with the crystal action.
It's ridiculous, and I love it.
The fact that Kenobi waves at Grievous as he's pushing the crystal, like, he truly is the master of.
My favorite one, my favorite line in this episode is hands down. I forgot to mention this earlier. Next time, try not to lose it. Remember, this weapon is your life.
Anakin does not miss the opportunity to
get
some of his own back. With Obi-Wan.
It's great.
Just overall, this arc, I want to see if you feel the same way. I was shocked by the tone for something that would happen so late in the Clone Wars. I was shocked by the levity and just the chaos of it all with we have, with Obi-Wan saying like, oh, are you not surrendering? I'm going to take that as a no, like as Grievous's lightsabers are inches from his neck, yelling out to the battle droids as he's being imprisoned. Just all those kinds of moments. I'm not complaining, but it feels so over the top and so, I think, different from a lot of the late Clone Wars and from any of the Clone Wars that I'm just wondering what happened here.
I don't know. I do remember Revenge of the Sith has the humor of its own. Of course it's a dark movie, but there's Cody, I'll try not to destroy all the droids before you arrive.
Yeah.
And there's of course the infamous elevator scene that got cut.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Half of these
I think
scenes...
this beat is down.
Yeah.
No. I think this beat is up.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that's I think what kind of stood out to me about this arc is that half of the humorous moments, half of the funny bits were on the same level of borderline absolute batshit insanity as the extended elevator scene from Revenge of the Sith. That's kind of what it felt like to me. Like, some of these moments felt kind of deranged in the best possible way.
Yeah.
But
I want to take two things from the final council scene if we're ready to move on to that.
Let's do it. Yeah, I want to hear what you have to say.
First one of the Jedi says, "We may never know what plans Grievous had for the crystal." This is what I wrote in my notes for that. Yeah, very sad. This arc needs like a sequel or something. We need to find out what they were using the crystal for. Maybe they're using it for like a super weapon, and then like a rebellion breaks out, and then they go to attack the super weapon. I'm just spitballing. Just some ideas, throwing some out there. Secondly, Yoda tells Anakin at the end, referring to ancient legends about the Sith using Kyber crystals as ancient super weapons. In legends, we often find great truths, Skywalker. This rings back to that Rebels line from Ahsoka. There's always some truth in legends.
Absolutely.
And legends can mean fables, but it can also mean Star Wars legends. Which is basically the Clone Wars writers saying that they can take anything from legends that they want because they know how much fans like that stuff. But here's something else interesting.
Came true.
Here's something else interesting that we can say. Technically, with how this arc turned out, this could be self-referential. This arc, technically, until further notice, is not canon. So it could be considered as legends, which means in legends, we often find some great truths it says about a legends arc. Boom!
Very true. Boom.
When I figured that one out, my mind was blown. Anyway.
There you have it.
Yeah.
I had a lot more fun with this arc than I thought I would. It was definitely something completely different. Definitely some much needed levity after seasons 5 and 6 of the Clone Wars. So a very fun little detour indeed. A very fun little niche of Star Wars.
I had a fun time with this arc. I think I liked it less than Jacob did, just because generally I think
it's my kind of arc.
Yeah, it's your kind of arc, and I think there were some things that was like didn't quite work for me because like there was a bit of lack of focus with this arc, and I think there was a bit of like, what are they doing here, and how are they doing it? The Big Bang slaps as an episode. I love that episode. A Death on Utapau is pretty bad, honestly. But I loved taking this little break from the normal content we've been doing, and I love talking about this arc that not many know about, and it's fun to take a look back at what could have been. Now we get to everyone's favorite part of Star Wars in the Galaxy. What you've brought me today is going to be worth 1/4 portion. That's right, 1/4 portion, the part where we do something a little different. Today we have Star Wars opinions. We got 2 opinion questions. Jake, you want to start us off with your first opinion question?
Yes, absolutely. Continuing in the theme of these special vaulted episodes, Eli, I'm going to ask you, what is one canceled or abandoned, no longer serviced Star Wars video game that you think deserves to be resurrected?
Okay, I'm not kidding you. My first 1/4 portion question was, what is your favorite scrapped Star Wars idea? We were on the same wavelength, but you were doing video games, and I was doing like stuff like, I'm not even talking about things that were canceled. I'm like, oh yeah, Padme was going to bring a knife on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith, and stuff like that. But canceled video game. Star Wars Battlefront 3.
Yeah. I mean, for
Star
me
Wars
also,
Battlefront
that's hands
3.
down.
Done.
By that, do you specifically mean new Star Wars Battlefront 3, old Star Wars Battlefront 3?
old Star Wars Battlefront 3.
There we go.
Because we don't have any evidence that they ever were going to make new Star Wars Battlefront 3. We did have evidence that they were going to make old Star Wars Battlefront 3, and they were doing some what-if stuff. They did some designs for a Sith Obi-Wan and a Jedi Maul, which were really interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy. Love that stuff. What about you?
Man,
I mean, 3 or is it 1313 or
Since you took Battlefront 3, even though that would have been my choice, I am going to say, I'm going to say 1313. I really would have loved to see what they do with that idea, where they would have taken it. I thought it had a lot of potential, and I was sad to see it go.
Yeah. No, yeah. 1313 looked cool. Um, on a similar wavelength, what is your favorite Star Wars scrap idea?
Favorite Star Wars scrapped idea. Wow, that's such a broad. Let me think
Something they
about that because
developed
it's such
either
a broad
conceptually or
category.
stuff like, yeah.
I think one of my favorite scrapped ideas, in a lot of the early Ralph McQuarrie art, or in some select pieces, you see non-force using people wielding lightsabers. You see stormtroopers
Wielding
wielding some early
lightsabers.
version of lightsabers. I think in some, even though this would be super, super world altering for Star Wars, in some what if, I think it would be really interesting to have a universe in which the lightsaber is not just a symbol of forced users of the Jedi, of the Sith. What if it's just something that people use? How would that play out? Is it a status symbol? Is it something that's frowned upon? Is it celebrated? I think
I
there's
will
a
say
lot of
this.
possibilities
In
there.
the 2015 Star Wars comic, there is a squadron of stormtroopers called Scar Squadron that use lightsabers.
Scar
So,
Squadron.
yeah, Scar Squadron. From what I've heard, they kind of have the Death Trooper curse where they look cool but they don't do a lot.
Oh yeah, I think
Also,
I've read one comic
Scar Squadron
that they're in.
is coincidentally Imperial Task Force 99.
Ironic.
Like say Clone Force 99, like say the Bad Batch.
Yeah. Yeah, the one I read here was where they had I think they were trying to take down Gracchus the Hutt, maybe. If you know that arc, but I don't know a terrible amount about them.
Anyway, my favorite Star Wars scrap ideas. I have a few of them that I want to throw out. I have two of them. First one, the deleted scene from the Clone Wars Season 3 Mortis arc that showed Darth Revan and Darth Bane and their spirits. It would have made Darth Bane canon 3 seasons earlier. It would have made Revan canon. I know I hate Revan as a character, but I'm still intrigued. I think it would have been cool. First one. Second one, the Episode 9 concept art where they had Coruscant. If we had seen Coruscant in Rise of the Skywalker, which could have actually happened. Again, I love that movie, but if we saw Coruscant in the Rise of Skywalker, that would have been incredible. ST Coruscant would be crazy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what's your second one?
My second one is which Star Wars character, Eli, has the best style?
I mean, Lando.
That is a good answer. I will give that to you. However, I would contend that there is another. Sabine. I think Sabine has some of the best style. She's constantly changing her armor and she's constantly changing her hair. She has so many cool different styles and looks over the course of Rebels, and especially with that short hair at the end, I really hope that they make her look very cool and stylish and give her some crazy dyed hair when they bring her in live action.
Jacob,
I think
I need to
awesome.
remind you what Donald Glover looked like as Lando at the end of Solo on Numidian Prime.
I mean, yeah,
look at this guy.
He looks freaking snazzy. He looks. I'm not.
He looks incredible. Yeah.
He looks incredible. But we did. I just think we didn't get enough of Lando in Solo. I can't get enough of Lando. I think.
I'm excited for the series. My second one is a choice question. Okay. So let's talk about the three main villains of the prequel trilogy: Darth Maul, Count Dooku, and General Grievous.
Just kidding.
Yeah, and General Grievous. Of the three, who do you like the best? Who do you think is the best of all three of them?
I'm gonna go with Count Dooku because he is refined. He is not your average Sith Lord, and because of his strange dedication to trying to tell Anakin and Obi-Wan what's actually happening in Attack of the Clones. Why is he doing that? What is motivating him to do that? Why is that not a massive risk? What is and then later on, in the Lost one, we get him saying, "Oh, you should have believed me on Geonosis all those years
all
ago."
those years ago, Obi-Wan.
Not only is that an amazing moment, why? Why does he want? Why does he care? What is the end game there? I've always been so fascinated by that I've got to go with Dooku.
Devore, don't kill me. Because I know Devore is a big fan of one of these characters. Don't go after us. Your fiance already has a habit of going after us. I don't want this to become a family thing. I'm also going to choose Count Dooku. I'm going to choose Count Dooku. It was tough between him and Grievous. Devore, don't come after me because I didn't choose Grievous. But yeah, you know how much I've always loved Dooku as a character.
Eli, you're like an OG Dooku fan. Like I started to come around to Dooku, but you've been you've been a Dooku fan since the moment I met you. Like you're a real OG Dooku fan.
I'm an OG Dooku fan. I love the stuff we see with him. I think his story is incredibly tragic, and I think his story is incredibly interesting. There's a lot of nuance to them. And this is a guy who is one of the best duelists in the galaxy, but then Sidious just decides to force choke him across the galaxy, and that just happens. And Steve's like, he has the. Also, by the way, let's talk about his style too.
Yeah.
2 words. Yeah. I need 2 words. Exquisite pajamas. All I need. That's everything. If you haven't played Battlefront 2, look up Star Wars Battlefront 2 Count Dooku Exquisite Pajamas. Chef's kiss.
Absolute chef's kiss. Say what you want about EA, but they do have a sense of humor sometimes.
They do. It's great. It's incredible. I think that's it. That's going to be it for this episode of Star Wars in a Galaxy. Next week, for episode 75 of Star Wars in a Galaxy, we have an exciting episode. I'm so excited to announce this. This is the first time I've spoken this out loud. The incredible Alex and Molly Damon of Star Wars Explained will be joining us to talk about the Martez Sisters arc. If you've listened to this podcast at all, you know how huge of a fan I am of both of them. They're basically both my heroes. And they're such huge influences on everything we do in this community and everything that a lot of guests we've had on do in this community. And we're so incredibly excited to welcome the 2 of them on for what I'm sure will be a fascinating conversation about the Martez Sisters arc, which I know the 2 of us already have some feelings about. And I think they're going to offer some really great new perspectives. That's going to be released next week. Very excited for that one. Until then, thank you so much for watching this episode of Star Wars. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Star Wars in the Galaxy. You can listen to us and all of our previous episodes and future episodes on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We'll be there. If we're not, email us, swinagalaxy@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, @InAGalaxyPod. Instagram, @StarWarsInAGalaxy. You can follow my personal Twitter account, @OchiFan327. And until next time, may the Force be with you. Always.